Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Identity Library. My name is Veronica Becher, and today I'm sitting with Lucas Ciscato.
Ciscato.
Oh my gosh, I'm already failing. And thank you so much for being here. And I feel like this is the most stressful episode I've recorded so far. Without even joking, we just got a flash warning and I don't have an umbrella, so good luck. If you see a really wet person running across campus, that's me. I swear, and my t-shirt is also white, so congratulations, Veronica, of thinking ahead of time. But yes, I just hope that no one is going through the same issue as I am. Do you want to introduce yourself? Maybe Lucas, sorry for pronouncing your last name wrong.
Totally fine. I've gotten my name pronounced wrong in so many different ways. In high school, I did speech and debate. Also, I'm Lucas, the introduction part. But for speech and debate, I had my principal. She would say, Lucas Ciscato, Lucas Ciscato, Lucas Ciscato, like all the different pronunciations you could ever think of, and never correctly.
This is the same with my last name because it's a CH sound, it's a H sound, and I always teach people. I think my friend, I don't know if it was Varun, Varun actually, he taught me this whole trick. So you always imagine you're like a little kitten that's super mad at you, and then you need to do this like sound, like sound, and then that's how you get the CH sound in German. So Becher. Not Becker, not Becker is a different word, so please don't use it. But yeah, thank you so this is a crazy introduction. So what are you studying? Maybe like just give us a, like, for the dear listeners, a rundown. What do you do? Who are you? Oh my gosh, there's like a thunder outside. This is crazy. If you hear like a notification on a phone going off or like a vibration, apparently it's Lucas' phone just navigating us through this episode. Congratulations. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so I am a technology, engineering, design, education major with a teacher licensure, which is a mouthful. But basically what we do is we learn how to become an educator in any realm that deals with technology, engineering, or design. So I especially like to focus on the design part of things, like Adobe products, and video production is actually the class that I'm currently observing and will be student teaching this fall or this spring.
Oh, what department is it in again?
Education.
And how did you decide to do that?
That's a good question. I did not want to go to school in the US. I was not planning on doing that. I was hoping to go in the Netherlands. But then I had like this whole crazy situation happen, a whole medical thing that we can get into if you want to, but it's a lot.
I mean, you have time, so go ahead. I'm not stopping you from telling me new stories. This is how you spill the tea without actually being allowed to drink any tea in the studio. It's so upsetting. And then Lucas also doesn't like tea, so
no.
Shame on you.
I was thinking right before this, like maybe I should drink some tea before I talk for however long. Like, get that voice nice and warm.
It's the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Especially after doing an ice bath, because I did that this morning.
You did an ice bath?
Yes.
That's crazy. Well, I actually did an ice bath before too.
How was that?
Oh, I don't know if this is the story about you, not about me, but basically it was just, I have a friend who's right now in Ireland, and he just called me up randomly, and it was like even raining and snowing outside, and he's like, Veronica, get your swimsuit ready. And I'm like, what? It's like dark outside. I think it was like 10 o'clock or something. It's dark. Like you don't see anything outside. It's just like raining and super cold. And he's like, we cannot go ice bathing. And I'm like, I'm not ready for that. And so basically we went inside, and apparently people go inside the water, and it was like a lake, a really cold lake. in the wilderness, and usually people go inside and they just stay in the water. But I was like, this is cold, so I ran outside. But then my brain was like, you can't just not go inside. You're gonna regret it your whole life for not experiencing this whole thing, once in a lifetime experience. So I went back inside. Then I'm like, this is too cold. I need to go outside. So I did this 3 times in a row. And Eric, my friend, he just looked at me. He's like, what's wrong with you? I've never had in my whole life someone returning back to the water, even though you just said that it's too cold. And I'm like, I had to go inside. I can't, miss out
so
on
funny.
this opportunity. But yeah, what's the story with ice bathing?
Yeah. Oh, well, ice bathing was for the Discomfort Club. We went running and then went on an ice bath today. But the story that I was alluding to earlier is, well, right after high school, I was planning this senior trip with my best friend, actually, since middle school, because I wanted to show him around the Netherlands and Italy, because that's where I kind of grew up. And then throughout high school, we just started making more friends and kind of forming a group. That senior year started to get a lot of tension. But we got to the point of planning the trip with everyone. So we were like, we can do this. It'll work out. And yeah, so we went to Europe. Which, what they say is like the best way to know someone or to know if you actually can be friends with them is to go on a trip with them.
Oh my gosh. Wait, where's the saying from? Because Russians say the same thing.
Really?
Seriously.
It might be from, I don't know, a Russian saying.
Because, the Russian saying, like my mom would tell me all the time, if you want to know who the person is, you have to go on a field trip.
Yeah.
And once you spend time with someone 24/7, you will actually know what the person is like. And there's a second saying, it's like everyone has cockroaches in their head. Meaning, oh my gosh.
I've never heard that one.
That was loud. Yeah, the weather was crazy. But cockroaches, and basically it's like тараканы в голове. That's like the word. I cannot roll the R. If anyone is listening, I can actually not roll the R. The German R is canceling it's out. And it means everyone has their own issues and things like habits or tics that make them kind of strange in a way. But it's your choice to accept them and to like them. And if you can't live with these traits, then you just shouldn't be with the person. It's kind of like a life advice.
Right.
So
you got to learn to love the cockroaches.
Yes.
Inside of people.
Because everyone has them.
Right.
It's like there's no one perfect out there that will be like, oh, I don't have anything. I think I'm perfect. I don't have any flaws and issues. Because a flaw can be different from person to person. So you might see something in, the person in front of you.
Yeah. That makes sense. The cockroaches is kind of
crazy. I know. I don't want to imagine any cockroaches in my head. Just saying, not my thing. Especially since I'm living in North Carolina, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
We have way too many of them.
Anyway, so my friends and I went on this trip, and a lot of things happened, emotionally speaking, between everyone. So we had 2 people who were exes.
Oh my gosh. Should I comment on that? You're just waiting and looking at me.
Which is kind of crazy.
That's crazy.
And 3 days into the trip, one of them, a lot of things happened between everyone. So the tension was really high. And then we got to a point where there was a breaking point where there was a screaming match basically on day 3 of our 3-week trip. And it ended with hey, I never want to be friends with you after this trip again. I'm going to pretend like I can deal with you, but I never want to talk to you again.
Yeah, did you escape this situation then? So you decide to move?
If you know me, I am very caring, and I try to do everything to make sure everyone else is happy.
So selfless in all kind of aspects, but disregarding your own standpoint.
So this had a very big emotional and mental impact on me. And I ended up starting to get symptoms like swollen legs, and was getting really tired, things like that. But I have the tendency to ignore anything that my body is telling me or anything like that when other people are going through emotional torment. So I was just continuing. We were walking like 20, 30,000 steps every day. And I end up with like really swollen feet to where my shoes don't fit. And so when we get to Italy, since my aunt is a nurse, she was able to get me into a hospital to find out what it is. And they did some blood work and found out I have lupus, which is an autoimmune disease that like your body or your immune system attacks your organs. And in this case, it attacked my kidneys. And so I was having like pretty bad kidney failure, and had to be rushed back to the US to go to the hospital because they said you need long-term care and it's better if you do that at home rather than here.
And I feel bad now interrupting this whole emotional story. Can you give maybe the listeners a rundown where you're from and kind of a little bit like why the Netherlands, why Italy, why the United States, what's happening there? Because I think it might clear up the situation and we come back to the story, I swear.
For sure. So I was born in Mexico to a Dutch mom and an Italian father.
This is when you like travel so far just to meet someone who's like has Dutch ancestry. You're like, this is how far I came in my life, and I still meet people from the area since I'm literally 2 hours away from the Dutch border. So yeah.
And I lived there until I was 4. And then when I was 4, my parents or my dad got a job opportunity. Well, it was still within the same company, but it was just moving locations to go to China. And we lived in Hong Kong for 1 year. And then because my dad was working in China and the driving from one place to the other or going to hotels for 4 days a week was difficult for our family. We decided to move to mainland China, and I ended up living there for 3 years. And after that, I moved to the Netherlands, and I lived there for 1 year. And we then got the opportunity to move to the US. So we had to go to Italy to get our visas, which is really hard. And it's crazy to me how difficult it was for us to get our visas while we had like an entire company that was trying to get us to the US. So they had money, they had attorneys and everything trying to help us apply for a visa. But it still took like 6 months that we stayed in Italy, and then we finally made it to the US, and I've been here since.
And when did you get diagnosed? Is it just to put like the whole thing in the timeline? It was before you moved to the United States, right?
With lupus?
Mm-hmm.
That was actually during that trip.
Oh.
So like 2 years ago.
Oh.
3 years ago, yeah.
That's crazy. How old were you there? Like
18.
18. That's crazy. That's, yeah, I don't know. I can't really speak from like experience when it comes to this thing, but does it affect your daily life in a way?
I mean, the biggest way it's affecting me right now is the fact that I have to take immunosuppressant medication, which is not good for your body or your immune system because you're literally like suppressing what's keeping you from getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, I mean, the medication also has a lot of long-term chances of causing cancer or things like that, to where it's kind of like a balancing risk of how much medication do I take to suppress my immune system so that it doesn't attack myself, to the cost of like what could happen in the future.
There are like other diseases too with what is a multiple sclerosis, where it's like MS.
Yeah.
MS. Is there another letter in this whole thing? But basically, it attacks also like your immune system and your body works against it. Yeah, and I have someone in my family who has that, so it's kind of like I can imagine how difficult it is, but it also like affects you differently. Oh my gosh, I just hope that you never get cancer. I feel like I have a huge family history of cancer, at least these past 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, since like my grandma went through like cancer and she just recently died. And it's just crazy how many people have diseases that you're not even aware of, that people don't talk about. But then basically almost each second person that you see has something, and it just gives you an understanding that life is so short and we should value it more, even though it's so difficult sometimes. Maybe I have a question with you traveling and moving so many places, since I've been also traveling a lot, and I feel like, how do you handle like finding friends or like a connection to culture when you don't know the language? I don't assume you know Chinese, even though you lived there for a year. Did you go to were you homeschooled? Did you go to a specific school? Like, how did it affect your childhood, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Growing up, I actually had a really hard time with all the moves. So one thing that we would do every summer and winter was go back to the Netherlands and Italy to be there with our family, or the company my dad works for would pay for it since we were expats. And so we would have like our home or our family in Europe, but it also made it really hard for when I had like summer or winter time off for school, and I couldn't see my friends because I was going to Europe and only going to family, visiting everyone in the Netherlands, everyone in Italy, and then for 2 weeks, and then going back so it was always stressful in that sense. But I always had a hard time because I'm someone who at least used to get very emotionally attached to people. In like, I'm not saying necessarily in an unhealthy way, just like I really cared about people. And so when we lived in Mexico, my grandma told me this story recently where I went from Mexico to the Netherlands for the first time because I was born in Mexico. And when I was in my grandparents' house, I would literally pack up my bag. And one day I literally went outside the door in the middle of the night because I was like, I'm out of here. I want to go back home, back to Mexico. And so I'm saying that to show, like, for me, it was always really hard not to stay in one place and to be with the people who I would consistently see, and being in a different, like, experiencing that change. And then it happened so often to where at this point I've kind of learned in maybe like both it can be a good thing but also a bad thing to keep my connections with people more like I can compartmentalize it and just like have a connection in a moment, but I can easily be like, okay, it's done. Like, I'm out of here because I'm in a different country or in a different situation.
That you emotionally detach yourself much faster. Yeah, I've noticed that. The issue is you meet sometimes so many people and then you're like, oh, it's the wrong time, the right person, but then it doesn't always work out the way you want. Just recently with the whole like Fulbright cohort that we had on campus, and all these Germans, I felt like with some people I would love to have a longer conversation, and I was like super sad that they left. And their flight is today actually, so they probably just left the United States. And it's so strange where you meet strangers on the street or while traveling for like a brief second and realizing that you will probably never see them again. And it's just like this bittersweet situation where you feel so attached and connected with a stranger that you just met, even for several months, and then you disconnect completely and your lives drift apart. Yeah, do you ever feel like you want to lay down your roots somewhere? Like, do you feel like, or you feel the opposite, you want to actually leave a place because of this disconnection between different places in the world?
Right now, I think both like my disconnect with the world, kind of like what you're saying with people and that ability to do things, and also my ambition to learn new things and to see the world is really leading me to just like, I cannot imagine settling down right now. And not to get very deep with it, but I feel like it's really connected to like a deep sense of loneliness. Like, if I keep moving on, going to a new place, then there's constant stimulation that keeps me going. And like I meet someone, we're friends, we're connected and everything, and then I can go to a new place and blame our disconnect on that. And
yeah.
I feel like if I were to settle down somewhere, I would like just feel very stuck and very lonely.
Do you think it's something you should work on yourself personally, or is it something based on also exterior motives or how you grew up? I'm not trying to do like a psychological like analysis about you, but we literally had this conversation yesterday, and when you asked me why I feel the way I feel, and I was like, Lucas, honestly, you should better be on my podcast because we connect on so many levels, and we have so many, like we agree on so many points where I'm like, that's just crazy. Because I also feel lonely a lot of times, and I feel like I keep my schedule busy because of loneliness sometimes. And I'm getting better, but I also realize the more I pay attention to myself and how I feel, the more I get exhausted by people because my body reacts to actually, it doesn't matter how many people you know, it's rather the quality of people that you have.
For sure.
And you get more sensitive about the people that you surround yourself with. So, yeah, anxiety and loneliness is probably a thing. Do you feel like you're connected to one culture more than another? Like, out of all of the cultures that you right now have on your list?
I wouldn't say so. And that kind of brings me to like the point of third culture kid. Like that's a term that someone coined for children of expats or of missionaries or people who work in the military who tend to travel a lot. Because basically what it means, like a third culture kid is someone who grew up in a different culture from their parents and a different one, like not in one consistent one. So it could be someone who moved around a lot like I did, or also like the children of immigrants who kind of have to balance the two cultures that they deal with. And for me, it was like really weird because not only did I not grow up in the same culture as my parents, but my parents had different cultures. And my mom actually had a similar life like I did. And she also lived all over, so she's not that connected with the Dutch culture. So in a way, like my culture has always just been connecting with the culture I'm currently in. And obviously, everywhere I've been has had impact on the way I experience life and what I do. And like, yeah, my thought patterns, things like that. But I'm also a very adaptable person to where I just kind of experience and go along with the culture that I'm living in right now.
Would you say you can actually call a specific place a home, or is it a feeling?
I definitely don't think I can call a place home. I would say more than anything, it's a feeling. It's definitely the question I dread the most when meeting people. It's like, where are you from? Because I have no idea how to answer that.
It's literally when you applied to Caldwell, you remember? Yeah. And it was like, we had this debate, and I'm like, I don't know. I sometimes even question it where I should be from and like what culture I should put myself in. It's actually like a fun fact. After the whole thing with Lodana's episode that we like recorded, my mom actually listened to it, and she was like, "Did you know that technically my grandpa or great grandpa was from Moldova?" And then we were just sitting there, and I texted Lodana, and I'm like, "Do you know what she just said?" And apparently, my mom's side of the family also is German, Germans. So. It's a mix. I don't even know. I used to separate my parents in like two cultures, but there's so many overlaps internally too, where I'm super confused. And so at this point, it's like just, really confusing and strange. Yeah. And I also feel like you take certain values from different cultures.
Yes, for sure.
Like I could never put myself in one culture, and I feel like, how do you, Lodana was super happy. She's like, "Oh my gosh, you're Moldovan." I'm like, "No, I'm not." But she's like, "Moldova," and she just couldn't stop like texting me these messages. So it just made me so happy. Like seriously, but it's funny.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious. Do you ever do you think like there's Do you feel at home here
Um,
in North Carolina, to clarify?
yeah, I would say I don't necessarily feel at home here. I mean, like we talked about, at home is more of a feeling of like, at least in my opinion, with where like you're with the people you're most connected with, I would say. But even then, I feel like there's also an aspect to it where you feel like you're culturally connected to where you are and things like that. And that's always made it really hard for me to feel at home, is because I've always felt different in different ways from other people.
Yeah. I feel like this episode is just like I connect so much to them. Like I actually have so much to share too, and it's actually not an episode about me. I feel this way like when I visit my aunt in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
I would never live in Russia. Like I don't see myself living there, but I feel like the people and the family members make it feel more at home, and I miss it so much. It's been like now 4 years, 5 years that I haven't been there. And I miss it so much. Like I really, really miss Russia. But I also feel like there's a disconnect between the people that make you feel a certain way and the place. And once the people are gone, the places doesn't feel the same way. And that's how I feel like about my college city that I used to live in Germany.
Yeah.
Like the people are gone. They're all over the place in different countries. So the place doesn't feel the same anymore. It's a bittersweet moment where you return and you realize life happened. And I don't know if you feel similar about it.
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, when I go back to the Netherlands and Italy, I do have my family there, and it does really feel like home for that same sense, like you're saying with Russia. But I feel like if I were to go back to where we were in China, or if even back to like the school I went to in the Netherlands, because I felt really connected there at the time. And I still have like this, I don't know, I look at it through like golden glasses. I don't know what the word is for it, but I really see the Netherlands as like, oh, like the perfect place where I want to be.
Isn't it rose-colored glasses?
Rose-colored glasses, yes, exactly.
Look at that. When two international people find the words to describe something in English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I still see the Netherlands kind of in rose-colored glasses, because when we moved so like I said, I always had a hard time moving, and I would be so devastated when my parents would give me the news. And when we moved from China to the Netherlands, I was like so mad and crying like nights and nights in. And then my parents were like, no, but like we're going to stay here. Like this is where we're going to move. We're going to be close to family. We're not going to have those trips every summer that we used to have. And that actually gave me like a final sense of hope of like, okay, I'm finally going to feel at home and feel like I'm in my place. And then like 7 months later, my parents are like, oh, well, in about a year, we're going to go to the US.
Do you regret it? Like, you know, looking back, it's a different feeling than being in the moment. Have you ever regretted that you had to move? Is it completely negative of being in different places, or was it also positive?
In the moment, it was definitely negative. But now, I mean, it's my life. It's the story of my life. It's what makes me who I am. So
it's okay. We need a second.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
sophisticated for me.
So in the moment, it was definitely very painful and very difficult, and I honestly like didn't understand why, if a God existed, like why he hated me so much. Like that was the constant thing in my brain. But now I look back on it and say, you know what? Like it created the person who I am. I have my identity because of everything that I've gone through, and all the places have had their cultural impact on me, and that includes like their values and things like that. And so now it also gave me my like the perspective I have, the global perspective, to where I feel like I can understand people very well from different cultures and connect with them pretty quickly. But I'm still working on getting like deeper to where like it really has like I have more of an emotional attachment with it rather than just like I said earlier, can compartmentalize it and just be like, okay, that was very nice in a moment. Kind of like you were saying, like sometimes when you're traveling, you'll meet some cool people. I also want to have, like, I love those people that I meet for the moment, and it's like very special because it was in that moment right there. But I also want to have those people that I feel very connected to for life, or at least for an extended period of time, where it doesn't just feel like, okay, I'm going to connect with them and get deep and everything because I know that at some point it's going to go away. But it doesn't have to, because we have technology and we have all these things that can help us make sure that connection is alive.
Yeah, I'm a bad texter. People make jokes about it. Apparently, I'm like texting like a dad. Shout out to Varun's dad. I guess, I don't know. I feel like we're the same person now. I'm getting there, and I feel like it's super difficult to keep in touch with people that you care about, especially when you travel and move. And there's even a theory, I don't remember the exact number, but my dad once told me, it's like there's a certain amount of people that you can keep in your closest surrounding, and it's the same with like remembering names. And once you move to places, they get replaced. And it's a really sad concept, but it's kind of like, it makes sense. The closer circle changes, the more you emerge with certain, like, or surround yourself with certain people. So once you leave a place and you're not close to them anymore and you're not in touch as much, these people move to like the second, like on a second place, rather than your inner circle changes and evolves. And it's kind of a scary thing if you think this way, that the people you see might be one day almost strangers to you.
Exactly.
Even though you felt like they were like your closest people. And maybe speaking of values, would you say there's certain values that you like or hate? And rather, what values have you taken from certain cultures? And was it like, I know this is a long, big question, but is it like, do you feel like certain values are difficult to implement in the United States or not? Or yes, I don't know.
While I continue to think about the values part, like some cultural things that are difficult to implement is, for example, the Dutch biking culture.
Oh my gosh, like, I should get a bike in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, like, it works on campus, but you can hardly go anywhere else in the US. Like in the Netherlands, if you wanted to, you could literally go from one side of the country to the other completely safely on, well, you can also take your bike on the train, but you could bike on bike paths, and it's like also very flat country, so it's like perfect. You could do that. But here, like, it works on campus, it works in neighborhoods, but you can't, you really have to force it if you want to try the bike like anywhere else. If you want to go to a grocery store or something. I actually biked to middle school here because I was lucky to live pretty close to my middle school, but no one else did that. And we actually started a trend in my neighborhood because other parents like, what? You trust your kid to go alone to like the school, like down the street in middle school? And yeah.
This is me in South Dakota. For everyone who doesn't know, I lived in South Dakota for years as a foreign exchange student. And I realized after, like, South Dakota is also, like, the area I lived in is really flat, close to Sioux Falls. And it was just really funny because after, like, living there for 4 months, I realized I cannot remember how to get home by foot. Because we drive by car all the time, and I can just not remember any directions when I'm not the driver or I'm not walking myself. So one day I decided if I ever need to get home, I need to know the way home. So I walked, and I got stopped by a police car. I actually never told this to my host family, so I'm so sorry if my host family is listening. And they asked me if I'm okay because I was walking home, and if I'm lost, I need a ride. And I was like, I'm good. I'm just walking home. And they looked at me like I'm crazy. And I've heard a similar story. It's these two guys that lived in, I think, Wisconsin, and they were riding their bikes, and also, again, the police stopped them and asked them if they're carrying any drugs on them because they were like, well, you look suspicious. You're riding a bike instead of taking a car. And then, and then they were like, this guy was telling this story to like all the other exchange students, and it was so funny. I'm like, oh my gosh. She's like, pay attention. You cannot walk everywhere you want. You need to be careful to not walk on someone's property. But I always feel this way. I'm like, why can you not, like, people could walk so many places. I just miss cities. I miss cities where you have like these like stores in the city center. It's not the same.
Yes,
Downtown
no.
is not the same here. I just miss it so much. And then I also think there's a whole debate with like how many goods, now I'm like a business student, how many goods are imported or exported in the United States, and we like import so much into this country rather than producing it here. And I know I'm not going to get into the whole theory, but it's basically, I'm like, why can you not, I guess you can't change a culture that is already set up for cars and completely.
No, and that's like the biggest thing that I would want to change in the US is the car culture. Because like you said, like those cities in Europe, there's no comparison. Like just being able to walk around, having shops there, having restaurants or little like terrace cafes or something where you sit in a terrace and you don't see a car in front of you. You might see a lot of bikes, at least in the Netherlands.
Oh my gosh. Have you seen the bikes next to the train stations? The ones that look like there's a whole house full of just
Yes.
bikes? I'm terrified by that. That's like seriously something that I've never seen before.
They literally have like high-tech parking lots for bikes in the Netherlands by the train stations. Like you go in and it tells you exactly how many bikes are in that row, where you can put your bike. It's multi-layered. Like it's insane.
So basically, if you ever want to park your car, someone in the Netherlands is like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can find a spot for my bike.
Exactly.
And then that's going to happen. You're like, I couldn't find a spot for my bike. Now my bike is going to be sad and lonely in the rain.
That's literally the way it is. Like I'm going to miss the train because I can't find a parking spot for my bike.
Yeah. And also, isn't there a thing like people avoid having really nice bikes because they know that they can get stolen really easily?
Especially in Amsterdam. The crazy thing is a lot of bikes will even be thrown into the canals. Like people are just like, oh, this bike is like unlocked or something. Let me just throw it in the canal. Or it's like attached and they'll throw it over the fence and it's just hanging on the fence. Like people are kind of crazy in Amsterdam.
Okay, no comments on that. I want to make a joke, but then I realized it's not appropriate in this setting. But yeah, interesting. Throwing bikes. I love how this conversation just went completely.
We went from values to throwing bikes over fences.
So, my dear friends, if you ever see people throw bikes, into the canal, please don't take this value into your culture. That's not something what we want.
No.
Coming, back to the values. Are there any other values that you feel like you've taken from these other cultures that you've lived in, and you feel like you're missing or you will love to implement in the United States?
I don't know if this is necessarily something I'm thinking about implementing, but a value, or I guess more of something that Dutch people tend to do or be like, is they're very pragmatic and very efficient. And I feel like that's something that I really do too. Like I'm very quick to the point when I'm doing something. And sometimes when there's someone else who's taking more of a roundabout way, it's like, sometimes I'm just sitting there like, okay, there's an easier way, but I'll just let you figure this out. And like, I can think of a more efficient way that we could do this.
More efficient way. I'm thinking, I don't know if Germans, well, we are trying to be efficient, let's say that. And we are, but it kind of sometimes has a downside. I feel like you see it in companies when you're like in the corporate world where you try to be really efficient. You don't connect with the people much.
Yeah, that's true.
There's efficiency can be negative too. It takes away the human aspect in certain conversations that you might have. And that's something that I feel like I enjoyed in the United States a lot. but it does keep you from like getting work done. It does keep you from getting other things done.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like that inefficiency sometimes does lead to connection, and it's really cool. But for example, I don't know, a big cultural difference, which a lot of people debate on whether they like it or not, and I'm interested to see what you say, but is the politeness in the US, the apparent niceness that you don't have in Europe. In Europe, everyone's quick to the point, and it's just like
that. No, I feel like we come off as rude sometimes.
Well, exactly. So someone goes to Europe and they're like, "Wow, people are so rude." But I feel like when Europeans come to the US, they often think like, "Oh wow, everyone's so nice. They keep asking me how I'm doing, how life is, like how all these things are." But then after 2 weeks, they're like, "These people don't care about me."
They don't actually care. It's like, you know, when you say, "How are you?" and then you don't always get an answer. You don't even have to sometimes give an answer. It's like you just say it to say it.
Exactly.
It's a routine. And it's really funny because when I lived in Germany, I would ask my roommates how they are. And I'm like, "How are you guys?" And they would be like, "Good." I'm like, "No. How are you?"
Like, how are you really?
And Germans don't tend to like overdo it sometimes because they like, "Tell me your deepest secrets and how you feel," and what are the emotional like they just jump into a deep conversation with a stranger sometimes, and it can be quite intimidating or like also invasive. Honestly, I totally get that, don't get me wrong, but I do miss it sometimes. Although we have small talk in Germany, people just they don't really analyze it properly. Probably, I don't know. We talk about weather.
About the weather, about sports.
It's the weather specifically. Sports is not a small talk because sports people know what soccer team you're voting for. And if your soccer team is not the one on the list, it's bad for you. Because
Amsterdam versus Rotterdam.
Oh my gosh. I know, I was not even thinking about that. I'm like thinking about Schalke and like Bayern München. And it's just, we had this one kid in high school that was a Schalke fan, and he just was the only kid in my class that loved Schalke, and everyone was just like making fun of him for several years because how dare you like a different soccer team? So sorry, soccer fans. I'm sorry. I haven't mentioned your soccer team yet on this podcast, but basically I totally get that. And we talk about the weather. It's like, you complain about the weather and the Deutsche Bahn. And if you complain...
The Deutsche Bahn is pretty bad.
The train system. Well, it's not bad. It's not China. But it's... I know it's late and sometimes it's not there, but have you ever flown like just from New York to North Carolina?
I mean, that's so much worse, is the airports here.
You are trying to just go down the East Coast for 2 hours, and I never had even once a normal flight home or there. It takes me double the time, and I'm not even gonna get into the details of how Loredana was trying to get to Washington D.C., and it was just like the worst trip ever. So yeah, I don't know. I would say sometimes we complain about a lot of things, but it connects people, and the culture difference is like. My Irish professor in Germany would tell us there's a big difference between Irish or like English people from the UK specifically and German people. You sit in a bus, it's really hot and humid. People from the UK, they have like this like stiff upper lip. This is like mentality. It's like when you don't say anything. As a whole, like background, it's like, I don't know if you want to hear the background, but I can like give you like a rundown if you want to.
I'd be interested in hearing it.
You're like, I don't want to talk about that. Basically, it comes back from the French Revolution, and people considered when the French Revolution happened, a lot of people, and please correct me if it's wrong, but that's what I've learned in school at least, considered or combined associated emotions with the French Revolution. And so a lot of people in the UK were like, we're not going to do this because the French Revolution happened because we showed emotions. So they developed a sense of stiff upper lip, meaning you don't say anything no matter what happens. So there are occasions when you drink alcohol when you like let down your hair and you can do anything you want and no one will judge you. And even if you're the boss of a huge company and you will drink so much and fall and pass out, no one will even comment on that in the next day because alcohol gives you an excuse. But then once, I think Princess Diana was like the first person where people start showing emotions, and it was like the first breakdown in like UK history where it's like, oh, Great Britain specifically maybe to like put in more parts of the of Great Britain into the whole story, that it's okay to show emotions, but people still have this mentality of not showing emotions because it leads to bad things. And basically, if you drive in a bus, no one would even mention it. But Germans, the first 5 minutes you're in the bus, they would like shout and be like, we need to open the windows, we need to do that, we need to change this whole thing, we need to fix it. So that's like the culture difference, and you need to be cultural aware, I think, of these differences when you travel and try to understand it. But yeah, French Revolution, fun fact.
Yeah, I wonder if that's where pardon my French comes from.
Oh.
Because like you kind of say it when you show too much emotion by cursing. You say pardon my French.
I was thinking, I don't know. When I hear that, I felt more like pardon my French in a way of like when people used to speak French, and that was like one of the most like the languages that a lot of people that come from good families would speak. Well, I feel like when your French isn't good enough, you might be like, I'm so sorry for my French. It's not as good. It's the same as people say, oh, my English is not as good.
I kind of want to look it up. Not now, obviously, but...
Oh, that's going to be a follow-up thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to, in the next episode, you're going to get the follow-up why pardon my French was the thing. But that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I actually feel like I've heard that it was because English-speaking people would see French as like a lower-level language. And I might be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. Let's look it up. But they considered it as a lower level speaking language, so like lower class, I guess. So if they would speak in French and it was like, pardon my French, like, but I don't know about that. Maybe you're right, actually, that it was the opposite, that it's like French was a higher level language to where if they didn't speak it well, they would be like, pardon my French.
I don't know if I can even start this debate because my only thought is like, Italian French opera singers and how literature and a lot of things worked only in French mostly, and you had the whole like French like people used to speak French if they were like in the higher up like classes and had more money and were more influential, and it was almost like a world language. And I think when it got voted into what language to speak, English just won over like French and some other languages, and that's why people switched over. Yeah.
Fun fact, in the US, it actually was 2 votes that decided English over Dutch as the main language.
There's like, that's crazy. Yeah. I feel like everyone has this like debate what language to use. There was a huge debate also like in certain parts about Russian, because a lot of papers, especially scientific papers, were written also in Russian. What's kind of like a really strange thought to have. But yeah. And maybe like the other thing with alcohol and like in bars. Have you ever heard about, when you go to a bar and you want to know where the person is standing in the bar and who's from what country? Well, I'm curious, where would you put the Dutch person in the room full of people and the Italian?
See, the hard thing is I'm not a big drinker. I'm not a drinker at all, actually. So I don't necessarily have experience with it to where I would have an educated guess, but I'm going to say like Dutch people would probably be with their own group doing their thing. Italians would probably be very like open, big, expressive, trying to get to know new people. But I might be completely wrong with that. My parents might listen to this and be like, you got that completely wrong. You don't know your cultures.
Yeah, I feel like Germans tend to also be by themselves, but alcohol can bring people together. But I don't think that should be an excuse. And I always joke because like sometimes you find people from the UK at the bar, and you're like, because it's like alcohol gives you a sense of you can talk about anything you want. Irish people do that too sometimes. Not everyone. I'm not trying to generalize, but it's a thing that you see. It's like once you leave the bar, you're kind of like, you don't talk about these really critical, controversial opinions. Yeah. Maybe like one last like question. Do you have a favorite place that you feel like that's where you want to live later on in life?
So I feel like I still, just like I said before with the rose colored glasses, I look at the Netherlands as like a really nice place because I genuinely do really like when I'm there because of the infrastructure and stuff. But I fear that the more like sticking to the people you know kind of mentality would not be for me. So that's why like visiting there, going to my family, I always feel like the Netherlands is such a nice place. The infrastructure is amazing. I love my family there and
The
things
fries.
like that. The fries are good for sure.
The
You know,
fries.
I really like Dutch breakfast, and I know it's very controversial. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Dutch breakfast is terrible."
What do you eat for breakfast?
Dutch people have like slices of bread, like,
Mm-hmm.
and on the bread they'll usually put like butter and cheese, Dutch cheese, but not like a whole sandwich. So
Yeah.
it's just like the cheese. Or we also have like this, it's kind of like sprinkles that you put on top of a cake, but we call it hagelslag.
The chocolate one?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I know these ones. These are like, they look a little bit longer,
Mhm.
and then I've seen that.
And they're softer. Like the
Yes.
sprinkles you buy at a store for cake are very hard, so you can't really replace it.
These
like the-
chocolate
Yeah.
sprinkles.
And they also have different ones. They have like, I don't know, fruit flavored ones, things like that. So I really like that breakfast. I don't know if it's just the nostalgia of like every time I'd go back to the Netherlands, be with my family, it'd be like, oh, we get to eat this again. But I think it's really good.
What do you drink to that?
I would say a typical thing would be like Dutch people have a brand of chocolate milk that's very popular there. That's like called chocomel, and you could either warm that up or drink that cold. I mean, in the U.S., when you get hot chocolate, you always get water-based chocolate drinks, but in the Netherlands, it's milk-based. And so I would say that's pretty normal. There's like specific Dutch drinks that I don't really know how to, like there's a specific orange, kind of like Fanta, I guess. And
What's the name? You can mention it.
I think it's Siski, but I haven't, whatever. I think it's Siski. But Siski, I think, is, I don't know if that's the orange. No, that would be strawberry flavored milk is also a thing, I think. I've never been a drinker of it, so I'm not like confident.
What I miss about the Netherlands, because we'll go there quite often with my parents, since my mom loves we'll go to Den Haag a lot.
Mhm.
If I pronounce it wrong, I'm so sorry. I apologize. And there are some other places, but it's just by the coast, and we would like rent out a little like apartment or like by the beach, or maybe even a hotel that doesn't have really like, it doesn't serve food. It's just more like to sleep there, and then maybe breakfast. And so I was just curious if that's what I've experienced was the thing. And I miss going to first of all, I love the 7-Up there. This is really random, but 7-Up in the Netherlands tastes so much better than anything else anywhere.
For a second, I thought you said 7-Eleven, but no, 7-Up, yes, for sure.
7-Up just is better than Sprite, and it's specifically only there better. And the other thing is the chicken. You can get chicken. Like, actually, well, for Americans, it's not a big thing, but Germans don't really have it in their grocery stores.
Mhm.
Like, it's like already pre-cooked chicken that you can eat, and it tastes really good with some like potato salad. Yeah, I don't know. It's not probably typical Dutch, but there's a specific Dutch supermarket that would like
Jumbo or
I forgot.
Albert Heijn Is it blue or is it yellow? Those are like the two big ones.
I saw both, so I don't know which one.
They're both everywhere.
I think it's the yellow one.
Okay,
though.
So that's jumbo.
and then the soft serve ice cream for some reason.
Soft ice.
Soft ice. That was and of course fries. And I always like joke when people visit me in Düsseldorf that we have the, how do you say it? The special. Special, yeah. So it's fries with some mayonnaise. Please don't judge me here, because everyone apparently judges me with eating fries with mayonnaise.
It's normal in Europe.
Yes, and then you have kind of like a barbecue sauce, but it's not the same as here. And then onion pieces on top. And the onion is like not sweet, but because of the sweet sauce, it's just perfect.
Yeah, and it's not the only thing you can like have special. Like you can get frikandel special, which is a type of meat that they sell at like fries places. Like special is just that type of mixture with the onion.
And that's so crazy. And then people look at me like, you're crazy. I'm like, try it, and then you will complain about it. And yeah.
Another thing that I really miss from the grocery stores in the Netherlands is they all have like this fresh orange juice making thing.
Oh my gosh,
machine.
Yeah. It's like, and then it's like you see the oranges falling down.
Yes. I miss that so much. It's so good.
I only saw it once. Where did I see it? In New York, somewhere in a small like grocery store, in like a Hispanic grocery store. Don't even ask me how this machine came there. I got there. But oh my gosh, yes. It's been a while. A while. But the thing that I'm not missing is the rain and the weather sometimes, because it's super windy. It's cold. Don't get me wrong, it gets also warm, but it's cold and it's like gray, and I feel like it just gives me winter depression all year long.
See, I haven't been to Europe in the winter in a long time. Like actually in 2018, I thought over 10 years, but it's not that long. But 6 years ago, so I don't actually really remember the
winter depression.
The winter
depression is real. I came back home after like last Christmas. I decided to travel back home, and I was like, Mom, why is your weather so bad? Like, I traveled here over 13 hours just so the weather is so bad that I can't leave the house, and then I get sick too. It was not really fun. But I'm like, North Carolina has better weather than we do in Germany right now. It's every single day. It's just gray, no sun.
Yeah. Should we talk about the way we met?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I should. Go ahead.
So basically, we were both finalists for the Caldwell Fellows here at NC State. And Veronica walks up in her winter jacket.
It was cold, okay? We had this, to give a rundown, it was February, okay? And no matter who tells me it's not cold in North Carolina, and I see you with these shorts and slippers every single day, I get it. But I'm freezing, okay? I'm freezing, seriously.
And everyone else was dressed up, but no one else had a coat except the two of us. And I was just like, that's such a European thing. Like, actually dressing for the weather, even if you're going inside in like 10 minutes.
And then he was like, are you from Europe? And I was like, I'm German. I'm like, why are you wearing a jacket though? And he's like, I'm half Dutch and half Italian. And I was like, this explains everything. We were the only two with jackets.
Literally.
The whole event was not even set up to have jackets, because we had to carry them the whole time. Yes. And I just had this huge green jacket. I didn't even know what to put it for all the interviews. And I'm like, this is crazy. Should I just wear it with my suit on? It's like a second suit that you put on, and then you sink in, because this is like my marshmallow coat that is so huge that you just dive into. It is a thing. It's like it's the same effect when you see Slavic person. Probably not relatable to you, Lucas, unless you want to out yourself as a Slavic person, that someone in your family has some Slavic roots. That would be funny. After this episode, your mom will come out and be like, we have some.
Fun fact, you're part German, part Russian, and part Moldovan.
Exactly. And the guy that was like, I don't know, fixing Lodana's foot up, Babrov is actually your uncle. That'd
Exactly.
be like the last step of the story. No, but basically, where was I? Oh my gosh. Yeah, basically, when you have so many backgrounds and stories to tell, but I just lost my thought for the first time in my life.
You're talking about being Slavic.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that would be really funny. But Slavic people would probably also dress really warm, and they would lecture you like all the time if you don't wear anything warm. And my mom would like, if you don't do that, if you sit on this cold stone, you will probably get, an infection, and then you will die soon, slowly. And
Italians are the same way, very superstitious and very much like, oh, like the cold will do this, or that, if you go into the water after you've eaten, things like that scientifically are now kind of like, maybe.
Questionable.
But, yeah. But that's definitely an Italian culture kind of thing, is also just being very superstitious about things.
Well, we realized that the Italian roots in you are like screaming, "Give me good coffee!" in the United States. Would you say Italian coffee is superior to any other coffee?
I have heard that apparently Australian coffee, specifically in like Melbourne, is better than Italian coffee because they have all the Italian immigrants, and apparently they've learned to do it better.
Do you know why? I feel like so many stories just correlate with my stories. Do you know the story of Starbucks failing in Australia?
I did not.
Starbucks was trying to establish their whole like program system, franchise chain in Australia, and they failed because they realized that the culture of drinking coffee is so different. While here it's like a lot on the go. It's like, hey, coffee, and then I drink it while walking somewhere. Well, in Australia, and prove me, like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Italians probably also a sit-down culture.
Yes, 100%.
And it's a thing of you value small coffee shops that are family-owned over big franchise chains.
Yeah, that's why Starbucks hadn't made like coffee didn't start a franchise in Italy for a long time because of that. But now, TikTok and things like that have really hyped up Starbucks for the younger generation in Italy. So it's actually has become a thing, and it's slowly like they're starting to get Starbucks everywhere. But for the longest time, they wouldn't do it because one, the coffee isn't as good, but two, there is not that culture of like get to-go coffee. No, you really sit down. You might even know the owner of the shop, and you'll talk, and you'll be like, oh, like how have things been? And you might know the people who regularly come or go there.
I miss that. I really want coffee shops like that. Jubila cannot do everything for my European heart. Because I feel like just sitting down and having a good chat over coffee. And also, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like getting coffee with someone here is different than getting coffee in Europe. If it's specifically when we're talking about genders and things like that. Like if I ask a guy, hey, you want to get coffee with me? It's a different connotation than it is in Europe.
For sure.
Like, just me? I don't know.
No, I do think that's the case. I'm not necessarily, like, I didn't grow up in Europe as, like, a person of youth. I don't know how to say that. Like,
person of youth is crazy. Like, okay, sir.
A young person.
Sir, and the lady of the hour. Okay, it's okay.
Because, like, I have all my cultural things from my parents more than anything, because besides that 1 year in the Netherlands and, like, 5 months or 6 months in Italy, like, I never really grew up around other people who are Dutch or Italian that are my same age. So I don't know if that culture has changed and that now the connotation is the same as in the US. But I do feel like there's a different connotation based on my experience.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like in Germany, if you ask someone for coffee, it doesn't have to be romantic. Like if someone sees me in a cafe with Lucas, please please, my dear listeners, whoever is listening, don't assume right away that we're dating. It's crazy the amount of times where you explain to people that friendships exist, and that's a different
Exactly.
debate for a day. And I know people disagree with me there, but I think especially in college, I do think that you can be friends with guys, and it's just
I almost feel like it's something that you gain perspective on with a more multicultural background. It's kind of like becoming friends with with anyone. Like it doesn't there's no like set rules of like I can only be friends with guys, or I can be friends with I can't be friends with girls, or even just being more accepting in general, because you just kind of learn to see everyone as people. And I feel like you learn how to connect with someone more. But at least that's my experience, I feel like.
and maybe just a comment like by the side. I feel like it's also difficult nowadays to distinguish and be like, oh my gosh, I can't be with this person drinking coffee because this person is a girl, and then this girl is not even into guys and you're a guy asking her out. Like there are so many like gender specific situations, and I don't know, like people identify themselves as so different that you can't just make an assumption based on what you see right away, and it shouldn't be someone's business, honestly. But it's okay. This is how you start a list of people that potentially are dating you, and you're like, congratulations. I'm looking forward to see what happens next.
Yeah, one thing that's funny is in my room at home, I have like a huge wall of pictures from high school. And some of the kids that my mom teaches have seen that wall, and they'll be like, because they always ask me like, do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a girlfriend? And I was like, no. And they'll see that wall and they're like, oh, you lied. You had 6 girlfriends.
Oh my
I see them.
gosh.
You're hugging them in the pictures.
It's the same as like we had this conversation yesterday. Some people, they hug each other and others don't culturally, and so it's always like, oh my gosh, you're like touching someone's hand. That means you're like now together. You're gonna marry each other in a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, chill out. I touched someone's hand. You know, there's like a difference, okay? No, but that's crazy. And I never had this culture. I never had this thought. It's a really interesting thing to share, that maybe it's a culture thing too. The more cultures you know, the least you think about you can't be friends with girls. But also maybe depends on what type of cultures you saw, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely cultural differences in that kind of aspect, but I feel like if you have a multifaceted experience where you kind of experience both sides, both cultures, you kind of learn like, you know what? I mean, it depends on the person, of course, and their own values.
I think it's about boundaries too. If you clarify from the beginning on, hey, I'm just meeting up with you as a friend, I'm not trying to get anything from you, that is a big, like, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure.
It's clear communication that makes a difference. And I think in a country where people are not clear communicator and they rather slide everything under the rug and they just try to like not address the elephant in the room, well, I feel like it's difficult to be just open and say to someone, oh, I'm actually not interested in you. I just want to get coffee with you. It's the same thing as I just experienced just recently, where I explained to a guy that I'm not like interested in the person, but I ask him if he has a girlfriend, and it's super. I just never know how to approach this. I realize Americans sometimes mention it in the beginning when they talk and they mention some fun fact like, oh, my girlfriend likes that too. That's how you know that someone is dating. But I just don't want to like have, like, it's almost a protection of myself to know, not that I don't trust you, but I just don't want to encounter the situation where I'm like hanging out with a guy who's like married and has 3 kids.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mario for being, you don't know this guy, for being married. And it's just, and also to like avoid issues, especially if you get along with guys. And I just want to be friends, and I do enjoy like meeting people. I don't want people to always misunderstand and think, oh my gosh, she's probably trying to get something out of me. I don't know if you ever experienced that with you approaching girls and then they're like,
I've always been wary of it. Like I've always been a bit careful because especially I feel like there's a fear of, especially when a guy approaches a girl, like what exactly that could lead to. So I've always been very careful when, yeah. But I also feel like I get along more with girls. So in general, I just try to make it very like, I don't know. When it comes to friendships, I just think one thing is, like you said, is very much the boundaries is very important, is just being very clear in communication. But I also believe that, I mean, the way I've approached it is always like trying to, if we vibe in a very, like, I don't know, school setting or something like that, if they kind of initiate things, and I feel more comfortable making sure that they're okay with it.
That's good. I think that's good. And that's also like maybe spinning down the whole topic of identity and coming back to the whole culture difference. It's important to understand from what culture the person is coming from, and maybe also doing some research. Honestly, this sounds a little crazy, but ask if the person doesn't provide you with enough background, maybe also understanding how culture works, and it's complex. And I think for you growing up in like so many different cultures impacted your views on a lot of like things like friendships and relationships and like gender. So my dear friend, do you want to leave something with a fun fact? What is the fun fact of the day? Do you have a fun fact?
Okay. So, fun fact about the Netherlands, because we talked about this earlier and it popped in my head. There are more bicycles in the Netherlands than there are people.
Whoa. Is this good for our environment? Okay, I'm joking. Especially for the water and like all the oceans. Okay, I'm joking. But yeah, that's crazy. But yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna round up, I think. Round down is crazy.
This is second time we're both like,
No, this is wrong. Round up. We're going up, not down. We are in the Netherlands. We don't have any obstacles down, unless you just jump into the water. That's why you don't swim in certain places, because there are bikes out.
Because the bikes run at you.
They will. You know when you have these like movies when you like cross the path between life and death, and there are like some monsters under the water trying to pull you down. I don't even know. This is the thought. Don't ask me where it's coming from. I don't even know what movies I'm watching to have these thoughts. But apparently, like in a Dutch like horror movie, it's probably just a bike that is pulling you down instead of having like a no-face person, like a monster. So it's like the invasion. So if you ever, if Lucas ever decides to start a movie, because he likes, teaching kids about different cultures and creating videos, and it's going to be named The Bike.
The Bike. The Haunting Bike.
The Haunting Bike. Okay. But yeah. I hope this whole story sprinkled out your life a little bit, and you could put it next time when you eat some bread with cheese, and you probably want, but put some sprinkles on top of it, so you sprinkle up your life, so you don't get seasonal depression over the bad weather we have today.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, sorry I feel like I'm gonna invite you over and over again. I feel like there's so much to cover. But I appreciated your time, and I hope any one of the listeners enjoyed this whole strange conversation that was all over the place.
It literally was all over the place. Like some unfinished story, some
it's okay.
Open-ended things.
It's okay. Yeah. But thank you so much for listening, and I really hope that you have a wonderful day, and see you soon. Bye-bye.